Vitya Diaries Chapter 12, Things They Won't Tell You. I got home late and rinsed off with the hose before going inside, trailing water from the back door to the carpet. In the bathroom I stripped and left my wet and dirty clothes on the floor with my dead phone on the bathroom counter. Off came the brace, too, which was wet and dirty anyway. I could shower without it and get my aunt to help me with it after. The bruises were fading, but I still looked pitiful in the big bathroom mirror, pale and skinny with wet hair hanging in stringy clumps. I showered, but with only one hand. Washing my hair was an arduous task. It took 10 times as long, and I was so tired by the time I finished that I just let it air dry. "You missed dinner," my aunt said when I came back downstairs in clean, dry clothes. Was that all she had to say? I was gone for hours. "Sorry. You tracked in mud, too." "I can clean it. Already done." The tile by the back door was clean and dry, no evidence of my mistake. "Can you help with my brace?" "Oh, Vitya, look at this. It's swollen again." "I fell. You need to be more careful." "Honestly, I know." I sighed. "And I broke my phone, too." "You what?" "Really, Vitya?" She re-wrapped my wrist and my uncle took my phone apart and put the pieces in a bag with rice. By the next evening, I had my new phone back and in working order, but no new texts from Nico. There was, however, one from Yogi. "Second place. Hey, coach said you got hurt. Are you okay?" It had taken them over a week to notice. Maybe they were even glad that I wasn't around. Me, "Yeah, thanks." He didn't reply and I didn't care. From then until I was allowed to go back to the rink, I mostly slept. What else was there for me to do? And when I slept, I had nightmares. Running, being chased, hands holding me, wrenching me back from escape, touching me, laughing, staring down with a hatred so raw and final that it broke my heart as thoroughly as it did my bones. The wolves always got me. Every time. Every single time. But even if I wanted to skip the dreams, I couldn't seem to stay awake. I was tired. Tired of everything. My aunt dropped me off at the rink for my first day back. 2 hours late. She insisted on driving to make sure that I'd get there safely and she had some shopping downtown to do. "Don't overdo it, Vitya. I want my nephew to be healthy." I waved from the steps. "Yeah, I got it. Thanks. You sure you'll be okay coming home?" "No. I wasn't sure, but boys were meant to be brave." "Yeah. Call your uncle if you want to ride." "Okay, auntie," I said. "Thanks." It had been 2 weeks, but the Sports Champions Club was exactly the same as I'd left it. My being gone hadn't changed anything. The same people were doing the same things they always were for their training, utilizing the facility for their chosen sports without a second thought for the world outside their own. I dropped my backpack and sneakers off in the locker room, pulling the sleeves of my hoodie down to cover the brace on my wrist. Even though everyone on the team knew what had happened, I didn't want anyone pointing it out. I was just here to get some practice in. My boots were scuffed from the fall they'd taken on the sidewalk. I'd probably need new ones before the season started anyway, but I hated the look of the course marks where there shouldn't have been any. At least the blades were in good shape. I'd made sure of that. I carried them out to the rink and plopped down on a bench to put them on. Doing so one-handed was a lot harder than I thought it'd be. They were broken in enough that I didn't have to do much to get my foot inside of the boot, but lacing them was another story. My sneakers always stayed tied in a double knot, so I hadn't even thought about it. I yanked at the laces, struggled to get the right pressure out of my injured hand, and had to start over. If the boots weren't tight, I'd probably break my ankle. That'd be even worse than a hurt arm. "Hey, can I help?" I looked up to see Yogi, standing with skate guards on, cool smile slapped on his face like a permanent fixture. It stayed even when I frowned at him. "Why, you look like you're struggling here." "Well, yeah." I turned back to the skates, forcing my fingers to grip the shoelace again, yanking tight enough to make me grimace. "My wrist is broken, but I'll get it." Yogi scratched at his sleeve. "If it's broken, you shouldn't strain it." I made a loop, tugging again. "I'm not gonna sit here and expect anyone to help me." But I offered. "I lace my own skates, Yogi." "I'm only trying to help." His calm facade was finally cracking. "But fine, be that way if you really insist, Viktor." I didn't even look at him until I heard the clack of his skate guards as he stomped away. "Yeah, thanks for nothing." I called after him. He didn't stop, so neither did I. "You know, I don't need your charity or your pity." He didn't reply and I went back to tying my skate, finishing the work with a half-assed knot. Then I started on the other one, arm aching, cheeks burning. You shouldn't be so mean to him. It was Sasha, leaning on the barrier to watch me. He was really worried about you. Shut up, Sasha. Look, I know you got jumped, but that's no reason to. I said shut up. Hot tears poured down my face as I kicked the unfinished skate away from me and got to my feet. When had I started crying? Who knows? It didn't matter. Viktor, whoa, calm down. There was a flood of red-hot shame and frustration, and I couldn't stand to be where Sasha could see me. Georgi was probably watching, too. Maybe Coach and all the other people that shared the rink with us. I wiped my eyes with the back of my brace and half-stomped, half-thumped back to the locker room, stride uneven with a heavy boot strapped to only one of my feet like a duck with a peg leg. Even with it, I moved fast enough that I was on the narrow bench in front of my locker in time for the sobbing to start. Not just any sobbing, either. The kind that makes you choke and sputter and hold your breath in a vain attempt to keep quiet. But it didn't work. It never did. I was loud and got snot on my sleeve and even went as far as to try to hide my face in the dark quiet of my locker. But it didn't do any good. Everything was wrong. What did I do to deserve all of this? Crying brought the headache back, too, hard and throbbing with every beat of my heart. It was after several long minutes that I calmed down enough to pull back from the locker and slumped down on the bench, looking down at my one blurry skate and the wibber-burly tile on the floor. What was I doing? There was the dull metallic clunk of the door as someone came in from the rink, and the slow, heavy footsteps of someone approaching with caution. Coach. I wiped my eyes on a clean part of my sleeve. Vitya? He asked, calmly but hiding reproach. I cleared my throat so my voice wouldn't crack. Yeah? But it did anyway. He came to stand at the end of the row of lockers, watching me. Are you okay? I thought about telling him the truth, but I wasn't even sure what that was. Frustration and confusion weren't good excuses for acting the way I had. So in the end, I just shrugged and mumbled a little yeah, and then an apology a moment later. Sorry, Coach. You should apologize to Georgi. He didn't even need to say it harshly for it to sting. And I wiped my eyes again, biting back a fresh, choking wave of emotion. Of course I should apologize. I'd been a jerk. Georgi was only trying to help. I didn't want him to. But that wasn't Georgi's fault. I didn't like lashing out. I didn't want to be an asshole. That wasn't me. It took a little bit for me to say anything. Coach waited, patient as ever. Yeah, I said, finally. You're right. Coach stood there for a little while longer, probably waiting for me to do something. When I didn't, he turned around and ambled back to the rink. I stayed where I was for ages after the doors clicked again. I was supposed to be practicing for next season. I really needed to, but I just couldn't. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I didn't want to skate. It all felt so pointless. In that moment, I realized that everything I'd worked toward didn't matter at all. No one would care if I stopped, except maybe Coach. But he had Georgi now. He'd get over it. I hadn't left a mark on history or made an impression anywhere. I could quit and nothing would really change. I'd still be just as useless, but maybe not as tired. I had my skate off with minimal effort. Untying was a lot easier. I put on sneakers and replaced my backpack with the one boot, then went back out to the rink for the other one. Sasha was trying to teach Georgi how to land his combos more cleanly. Like me, Georgi focused more on the performance aspect than the technical. I never let it slack, though. Sasha was the opposite. Skill through drills. Coach was watching them, though he glanced at me as I made my way back to the bench where my skate was. He could look all he wanted. I wasn't going to interrupt their practice to apologize. I was going home, and I wanted to avoid getting grilled. Maybe next time, if there was one. No one stopped me as I retreated with my skate, and no one came after me when I'd pushed them both in the locker and left the building. I don't think anyone even looked at me as I went down the hall. I called my uncle when I got outside. I didn't think I could handle the trip home by myself, not while I'd been crying. My uncle was good for helping me keep the tears bottled up. He was a friendly guy, but other than at holidays, he was mostly business. He agreed to pick me up, which left me 15 minutes to kill. I texted Nico. Me, so you don't really like figure skating, do you? Why, that's kind of a big leap in topics. Me, I'm thinking about quitting. Why, quilting? Like sewing? Why, aren't you gay enough, Miska? Me, quitting. Why, if you want to. Why? But Mum would be upset. Right, the only reason Nico talked to me was because his mama was my sponsor. I put my phone away and watched the sky instead. When my uncle came, I was completely tattered. He didn't ask any questions except if practice was good, and accepted my non-committal responses at face value without complaint. I skipped dinner and went to my room to cry and sleep and worry that my skates would be stolen. Why had I left them at the rink? I couldn't give up. I couldn't let go of my dream. Not for some bullies. Not for some dumb boy. Not for Yogi. Why? I was so stupid. I skipped my next practice. Not feeling well, I said. It wasn't really a lie. Then you should rest, Vitya. My aunt was happy to give in to my demands. I slept and I read and I wallowed. Then I went to my next practice a couple days later. My aunt once more driving, and Yogi avoided me. That was fine. I had work to do. At least my skates were still there. Vitya, you're not supposed to do any jumps until your concussion is Vitya. I didn't listen. I wasn't crying. I was determined. Actually, I was mad. I didn't have time to waste. If I was going to be at practice at all, I was going to make it count. That meant jumps, backwards maneuvers, and every other point-grabbing trick I could come up with. My original plan, but with extra passion. I wanted gold. I wanted world records. I wanted to prove to everyone that they were wrong, that I was worth it. It also meant a lot of falls in practice, and I tried to spare my arm each time by doing the combos with my brace raised high, increasing the difficulty, making my defeats mean something each time. Every time I hit the ice, I gained experience. Vitya, coach yelled at me from over the barrier, but he wasn't on skates, so it wasn't like he could do anything about it. You're going to crack your fool head open. Whatever you say, coach, I yelled back. Of course I didn't listen. Skating angry was fun. I got more speed, more momentum, and more lift with each reckless move. My skates hit the ice hard, carving divots, spraying ice shavings like a storm. Vitya, coach yelled from the entry point, face red, eyes bulging. Mad. So mad. I slid to a stop and swallowed. Get over here. Now. So very, very mad. I went to him, but slowly. I couldn't tell if it was hard to move because I'd worn myself out or if I was really that scared of him. He handed me my guards at the edge. I took them with my good hand and put them on, one after the other, feeling the heat of anger radiating off of him. Big Papa Bear was terrifying when he was like this. I stepped off the ice and tried to decide if it was worth attempting a smile while I waited for him to speak. Yogi and Sasha had stopped skating to watch. No one said anything for 15 whole seconds, though it felt like hours and would have been punishment enough. It felt like I was being boiled under his gaze. You, I said, breaking the silence. Vitya. He cut me off. If you're not going to listen to me, then you should just quit right now. I looked up at him, mouth falling open. But no, Vitya, I will not tolerate insubordination. And I'm not going to waste my time on someone so willing to put himself and others at risk. I glanced back at the ice where my rink mates stared. The paths that I'd carved in the ice were fresh, glittering scars in the bars of light from the windows. The last time he'd gotten so mad at me was when I'd fallen through the ice at Lilia's. He'd warned me against skating on the pond, but I'd done it anyway. I was 12, stupider then than I was now. They were all the same lines, too. Risking myself, risking others. Insubordination. It was the military training rearing its head. He was being a good general. Someone who would drag my useless body out of the water and carry me back inside, or rescue me from a church after getting beat up, or let me sleep longer at a competition when I was freaking out. I rubbed the side of my neck, justly chided. Sorry, coach. Go home. Wait. What? You've had enough practice for today. Go home, Vitya. I'd never been sent home before. Not even once. In all the years I trained with coach. It had always been practice over my decision to leave early for one thing or another. I said I was sorry. I tried an apologetic frown. Can't I just finish up? His hands trembled where they were clenched at his sides. No. It was definitive. The kind of no that meant no arguing. Fine, I muttered, and pushed past him. In my head I saw him catching my arm and pulling me into a hug, something to reassure me, but he didn't. He didn't even look at me as I walked back to the door leading to the locker room. And all I heard was him barking at the others to get back to practice. My uncle picked me up again. But this time he wasn't so happy about it. You know, Vitya, You're going to have to start taking the metro again. I don't think anyone will bother you. I rubbed the toe of my sneakers against the floor mat of the passenger seat. He didn't know why I'd been a target. I didn't want to tell him. I can't keep giving you rides all the time. I sniffed. Yeah, I know. Sorry. I waited a week before going back, missing another practice. No one called. Maybe it was expected. Or maybe I wasn't welcome back. My aunt shooed me out the door anyway, patting my head. Go on. Little birds with broken wings eventually have to start flying again, you know. My wrists still hurt. The braces hadn't come off. Why was I leaving so soon? Your little friends will miss you at the rink. Don't miss your bus. I put on a baseball cap and left. It wasn't much, but maybe it'd be enough to disguise myself. The walk was unexpectedly nice, even though I had to pass by the convenience store, largely due to the sunny weather. I waited until I got on the bus before texting Nico, and he kept me nicely distracted until I got to the rink. No one said anything when I came in, put on my skates and began my drills. Coach was his usual self as if the other day hadn't even happened. It was a quiet practice and I behaved the whole time. Nothing crazy, nothing inspiring, just drills and a little bit of work on my routines. When I went home, the crowds on the metro platforms pressed close. They were even worse on the trains. The bus was empty, but dark, and the walk home was terrifying. Even with jacket collar pulled up and the brim of my hat pulled low, I was too exposed. I walked fast, directly from the bus to home without any stops. Then I went to bed. I wasn't hungry. I felt sick. I didn't want to talk. I wanted to hide. My bed was the best place for it. It was the only place I could escape from the ringing howls in my head.